Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna try to mess with the steering on this cab over and see what we can figure out. Wait, before we start today's video, quick disclaimer. Now I do a fair bit of explaining in this video. Now I'm doing that to hopefully help somebody else out that may be doing something similar on their project. Now that being said, I am not a professional, so do not copy me, do not take my advice. This is not a how to do it, this is a how I did it. So back to the video. Now, I don't know if any of this is gonna work, we're just gonna go with it. Kind of doing it on the fly as usual, and we'll see what we can come up with. All right, so there's the original motorhome box, and I'm gonna go ahead and bolt that back on. That's gonna work for what I wanna do with it. I'm just gonna have to change the pitman arm. And then as far as the steering column is concerned, this is the one out of the 57. I'm gonna end up just cutting this thing off right here because I don't need the gearbox, obviously. All I wanna use is a section of this tube. This is the original steering wheel off the cab over, and I'm gonna use that with this 57 column. All right, so all the motorhome steering here needs to come off. Assembly here. Forget that wrench stuff. See if I can get in here. Got power tools, use them. All right, let me get a BFH in here. See if I can get these things broke loose or not. Sweet. Come out. There we go. Now the internet says this box should just bolt right up to the frame, which I don't see why it won't, so hopefully the internet won't let me down. Oh! Well, that's already a problem. Looks like I need spacers of some sort. All right, so as you can see here, it's hitting down on the bottom side and it's off the frame a little ways here. The bolt pattern is the same, but it does not fit properly. Now it's hitting down here on the bottom of the frame where the sway bar bracket hits as well. I really don't want to modify the frame right there. I would rather just do some kind of shims and shim this thing out and make it work that way. Yeah, I don't want to get into any of that, because then it's just going to open the door for cracks and garbage later. And these Chevy frames are already known for cracking up here, especially four-wheel drives. Two-wheel drives, not so much. I think I'll just find some washers and just shim this thing away from the frame a little bit and try to get it set up. All right, what I'm gonna work on here is just cutting this thing apart. I think I'm just gonna chop it down here. That shaft is hard. All right, there we go. That's all I need. I'm just gonna kind of test fit the shaft here. I trimmed it down a little bit more so it would fit. And I'm just gonna slide it in place, because I kind of need to know where I'm at with my steering too, as far as my angle goes and how far the shaft needs to be in. So I'm messing with this. It's been a lot of head scratching with this deal, believe me. Again, I don't even know if this is all gonna work, but I think it will once I get the correct steering joints. Whoa, okay. So now I can just kind of slide this up and down where I think I might want it, where it's comfortable anyway. Make sure it doesn't hit my big fat belly. That's actually pretty comfortable. That in its natural position actually is not too bad. It feels pretty good. Got a great view of the gauges. Nothing's interrupted. This is actually probably really close to where it was originally. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this right here. Don't touch it. And then let me crawl back out of here. Okay guys, I'm back. It's actually about a week or so later when I started this video, and then I kind of decided I'm just gonna kind of start over with all this stuff. I finally got my steering joints that I was waiting for. I was trying to mock this thing up with the steering box out of the, for the 57, the half-ton steering box. And I don't need to worry about that anymore. Now that I have the steering joint and everything for the motorhome box, I'm just gonna put this box back in there, and this is the one I'm using, that's the one I'm sticking with. Now this steering box for the motorhome, in case you guys don't know, this is a little bit of an oddball, the input shaft. This is a 13/16 36. So I kind of had a hard time finding a Burgeson steering joint that would fit this steering box. The other challenge that I've been facing too is just trying to figure out the right pitman arm for this thing. I've had several different people reach out to me, give me different part numbers and whatnot. And after just kind of doing some measuring on my own and figuring out some of those part numbers, the pitman arm was a little bit shorter than I wanted. I'm trying to keep it equal length. Now, as far as the passenger side is concerned, I was actually looking at maybe using an idler arm off of a 1/2-ton truck or 3/4-ton truck and bolting it up to the frame. But this frame is different than any other Chevy trucks. These things are unique to the motorhome chassis alone. So I'm just gonna stick with using the original motorhome bell crank assembly. There's nothing wrong with it and it works just fine. And as far as the driver's side's concerned, everything is just gonna stay the same. The drag link is the same. As far as like the 1/2-ton trucks, 3/4-ton trucks, they're all the same. The tie rods, all that stuff. None of that stuff is gonna affect anything. The steering or the brake bracket here, this was riveted onto the frame right here. I had to move that. All right, so here's a closer look at the double joint, or the double cardan joint, if you will. And now this one's got the 13/16 36 spline, and then on the other end of it is a 3/4 double D. And then the other joint that I got was a 3/4 double D to a 1-inch double D. I've got a chunk of 3/4 double D and then a chunk of 1-inch double D, and then these two slide inside of each other. If you get on Burgeson's website, they basically lay all this stuff out. They have a really nice breakdown of what to do as far as how to design your own steering and stuff. And this isn't the first time I've done steering like this before. I've done it plenty of times on off-road trucks and whatnot. Okay, let's get this motorhome box put back in here. And again, this thing's gotta be shimmed out. I'm not worried about the pitman arm right now. I will worry about that stuff later. You can see that it's obviously laid way down. Now I looked at laying, angling this thing up and whatnot, but if you try to angle the steering box up, it does complicate the steering at the drag link. So if you angle the steering box up, that kicks the pitman arm up, which takes the drag link, and that pushes the drag link backwards, if you will, and then that really makes it dog track, if you will, when you're turning, so that it doesn't keep everything even, and it kind of changes geometry. Okay, now one challenge with running double cardan joints is you need to run some kind of support. And because I'm running 2 double cardan joints in line, I have to run 2 supports to support these things properly. So you're gonna have the steering shaft supporting this end, you're gonna have the steering box supporting that end. But you need to have 2 different supports in there. One will pick up this end and then this one will pick up this end. I'll basically just show you kind of as we're going along here. I know it might be a little bit confusing, but I'll explain it here as we're mocking it up. So let's just get to mocking it up. All right, now we'll just put this steering joint on here. Now, this thing kind of has a gap right here in between for the original bolt that went through the main splines and then the splines in here. You won't be able to run this thing all the way down. You won't be able to bottom it out. So if you do bottom that out, what's gonna happen is it's gonna interfere as it wants to flex. The shaft sticks out into this inside the joint, so you can't do that. So I'm just gonna back it off a little bit to where it's just on that front part of the gear set there, to where it's flush inside there. And then I'll just snug this thing up for now. And obviously this stuff is entirely too long. This is just for mock-up purposes. And I'm just gonna snug one of these up. You can't let it slide down too far in there, otherwise it'll hit the joint. All right, now even though these joints will handle 70 degrees of angle, one of my big concerns with this thing is gonna be this joint down here on the steering box and the angle it's at. Obviously you can see that. All right, right now this shaft is pulled all the way up against the floor, and I don't know if I'm gonna have to relieve this floor a little bit to relieve that angle just slightly. Now this joint up here with this angle, I am not worried about the angle at all. This is a nice easy angle, so this up here won't be an issue. Okay. So now the end of this tube, it'll get this bearing, and this thing will basically press in there perfectly nice and tight thanks to work. And this is a True Cut lawnmower bearing is what this is, and it works perfectly. I'm just gonna leave that in there just like that. It's in there tight enough just for mock-up. All right, now I can just put this back together again. Okay, looks good. And that's all this thing does up here is it just pushes down and seats in there. That's all it does. Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, one thing I forgot to do. I forgot to account for this sleeve here that's gonna stick out past. I cut it flush. So I just gotta cut the tube an inch back. There, that's better. All right, now this will go onto here like that. Oh, I hope this is gonna work. We'll see, I guess. You guys will find out along with me. All right, I'll put that there for now. That'll work. Okay, so the next thing that I need to do, since this is going on here, like this is a double D, and then this is a double D as well. I just need to cut a little piece so these two go on here like this. I couldn't find a 1-inch double D to a 3/4 smooth, so unfortunately this is the way I have to do it. And then this will weld on to the shaft eventually once I'm done with it all. Burgeson doesn't recommend that you weld any of these things, the main joints anyway, but they say that you can weld these sleeves. Just like that, I got that thing all together now. That'll slide on there. Now let me put this shaft back in there, see where we're at. All right, still way too long. Basically, we're just gonna whittle away at this thing little by little until we get it right. Okay, changing plans. I made a sleeve here. That is the 1-inch double D. So now I will just put this in here, tighten it up, snug it up, and then I can slide that in here. That way it'll keep everything centered properly. So instead of cutting this thing even more, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna slide the column up. It's just gonna make it easier to deal with. It's effectively doing the same thing. Okay, there's that. That looks okay, but I think it's gonna be too steep down at the bottom. Okay, this is definitely too steep, I believe. It looks like it's too steep. Well, maybe not. I think it's right on the edge of its capabilities, so let's move some things around a little bit. I'm gonna slide the column up even more. All right, now, see, that looks better. That took some angle out of it, and that definitely looks better. And I'm really close to the floor, I know that now. All right, now this is where these heim joints are gonna come in. These are gonna go on the shaft, and I'm gonna have to make some kind of bracket that goes on the frame here to basically keep this joint nice and centered up. Because right now it wants to collapse on itself, and then that'll cause a bind, so I don't want that. So I need to keep everything to where it'll float really nicely. All right, I think that's gonna work. I am worried about that angle down there. I could cut the floor to give myself a little that'll bring that shaft this way. I really can't move the steering column anyway. All right, after reanalyzing this thing and talking to myself, I'm gonna take this floor and I'm just gonna give a little bit of a relief cut right here. All right, that was a little crude, but let's try it, see if it's better. Now I'm kind of sitting in that notch a little bit more. And I've still got plenty of room around the brake pedal. It looks fine. I think that definitely took a lot of angle out. Oh yeah, that helped a lot. Okay, that is much better. Okay, so now basically I just need to kind of hold this thing in position like this, and then I need to figure out my bracing. And then this angle on this joint is great. There's no worries there whatsoever. All right, I've got the heim joint on the shaft here, and I'm just trying to figure out kind of how I want to do this, basically. I want to put this thing down here as close to the joint, relatively as close as possible anyway. I'll just kind of mark this as the top of the hole. We'll call that good. Just kind of mark center here. Just get it as close as I can. Yeah, we'll just draw around it, screw it. Now I'm just going to put one of the nuts on here. Put the plate on it. I'll just try to do it to where it's right in the middle of the heim joint. That way it'll give me some adjustment. Now I'm just gonna try to hold this heim joint kind of where I think it needs to be anyway. All right, I think that should work. I need to make sure that this thing is gonna operate smoothly. That's my #1 concern right now. Okay, it's not binding, it feels good right there. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to get this steering joint set where I want it, to where it's not bound up or it's, you know, nowhere close to being bound up. Right where it is right here is actually really good. So I put the other heim joint on here, and I am going to make another plate that goes off the back up here where I cut this off. I'm just gonna put a temporary plate up in here. Ooh-wee. That thing is hot, 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 hot. All right, now this should be able to, whew, son of a gun, that sucker's hot. Now I'll just tack weld that thing right there. Once it cools off. All right, I'm just gonna clamp this actually, I think for right now. I'm gonna try to anyway. That maybe? Straighten this heim joint out. Make sure it's taut. Okay, it's pointed right at the column, so that's good there. Okay, that feels great. But one thing I did notice here, this shaft wants to slide down, which is putting a bind in this steering joint, so I can't have that. So for now, I just put a hose clamp on here just to keep this shaft from going down. So basically, I'm just figuring out I kind of need to do this backwards, start at the steering box and then work my way up to the column, because down at the steering box is the most important. Okay, so let me slide the steering column up a little bit more. All right, let me jump up in there and see how it is on my feet. So just looking down there, I mean, it's okay. We're fine. I've got plenty of room. If I go to hit the brakes, you know, I got plenty of room. I'm definitely not worried about that at all. That looks good. And now obviously I got to shorten this tube way down to where it needs to be, of course. But that actually looks okay. I think this is gonna work. I think it'll work just fine. Everything's working smoothly. I'd like to have that, maybe that shaft a little bit further away from my feet, but honestly, there's not much I can do about that. I mean, I'm just trying to think in a panic stop situation if I went to go hit the brake pedal, you know. I mean, I'm not even anywhere close to it. I'll be fine. I'd have to be way over here. You know, I'd have to miscalculate by a ton. All right, I'm gonna figure out the rest of this real quick and figure out the steering column, get that thing shortened up. I think we're winning here on this deal. I think we got it. I think this is gonna work out. You know, we're trying to use, again, with this project, you know, I'm trying to use what I have. Yeah, I had to buy joints and stuff, you know, those things aren't cheap. They're like 150 bucks a piece, so that's, you know, half the cost of one of those drop steering boxes. But for my purposes and for what I'm doing, this is gonna be just fine. It's gonna work good, I think. All right, I got the tube shortened here. Now I had to take a little bit more because the steering column had this in here. So I just went an extra inch. So now this shaft is actually a little bit shorter. So what I did, the center shaft, I made this an extra inch longer to make up that difference. Okie dokie. Snug this up. Okay, that doesn't want to stay. I'll just put a hose clamp on it just to hold it in position. Now, let me see if I am... Yeah, I should be fine. Slide this up. Should slide in there an inch or so. Yeah, it's nice and short now. That'll give me room to weld this too. And then obviously I'm gonna put another steering support. I'll put something up here to the bottom of the dash. Okay, I got this cut, the 1 inch. Now that'll go all the way down, close to the floor. So now I'm gonna take all this back apart again. This goes here. There is a hole drilled in this for the longer bolt. That's where this longer one comes in. This one goes all the way in there, all the way through it. Because I'm lazy, I'm gonna try to do this in the truck. All right, let's put this back together again. See, now that'll slide way down there like that. Push this back down again. Okay, so that thing comes all the way down to here. And that shaft is an inch shorter, so the end of it should be right in here. So I've got definitely enough. I just need a little bit. I just need a tiny bit of flex in there, a little bit of movement. All right, let's see how this is. That looks pretty good. Well, everything's turning. All right, I'm gonna mess with that lower support real quick. All right, done. Got a tie down on here, it's good to go. Okay, so the steering column needed to be pulled down and towards the passenger side. And that straightened that steering joint out quite a bit. That straightens out the column, this all looks good. Definitely kind of bus-like, you know, which I like. This is really close to what it was originally. Okay, I guess it pays to be a hoarder. So I have got some 2-inch, looks like it's 095 wall. This is one of the steering column, the chunk from the steering column. And would you look at that? Absolutely perfect. All right, I'm just gonna try to clamp this thing in here real quick, just to hold it in position. Make sure it's nice and straight. Turn it around. All right, that should work. Now we can cut it in half. I'm gonna try to cut this as straight as possible. She ain't pretty, but she good. All right, now what I want to do is have one side threaded and then one side I'm gonna drill through. All right, let me just make sure the bolt will go through. Yep, perfectly. And now that will just basically thread straight through into that, and then I can put another nut on that side if I think I need it as a double lock. And I can slide that on. Oh yeah, perfect. Sweet. Hook this back up again. All right, that's on there. Now let me lock this down. Made a quick order on Amazon last night and picked up one of these bearings here. And I'm gonna use this in the floor instead of the upper heim joint. This is gonna work out a little bit better, I think, and I can clamp this down to the floor. And then these allow offset as well. Okay guys, I went ahead and got the floor notched out here, and then I got the holes drilled through the framing for the flange, and then I went ahead and cut a piece of metal here to go ahead and fill that in. And now those will go in there like that and bolt down. That should be good to go. Let's see the holes on that side. Okay, there we go. All right, now let's try to get this base plate on here. Okay, all right, yeah, it looks good, it feels good. All right, I just got a couple tabs here made up real quick, and I'll just bolt these up to the bottom of the dash. All right, first impression. Oh yeah. Oh, it feels good to have this nice and solid. Solid-ish. Nothing interferes. It's great. I love it. Absolutely love it. Oh, it feels good too. It feels nice and smooth. Oh, cool. Whew. Yep, plenty of room. No issues at all. My feet aren't going to hit that. That bearing on the floor definitely helped a ton. That definitely stabilizes everything really nice. Keeps that shaft in really good position. Okay, I've got a couple of pieces of 1/4-inch plate here, which is what this is. It's definitely overkill, that's for sure. It doesn't need to be 1/4, but it's what I have. I'm just gonna mark this thing out. Mark it right here. Okay, there's that one. I know some of you guys mentioned, why don't you just get a bandsaw and all that? I would, but I'm cheap. All right, I test fit the front one and it fits perfectly, and then lo and behold, the other piece that I cut off, this is perfect for the backside. So I'm just gonna dress these and clean them up. Squeeze in here. Okay, that looks good. That'll definitely add a lot of strength to that. All right, we got that done. That turned out all right. Started to get a little windy there. Looks like I got a storm coming in, so I gotta get everything shoved underneath this cover. All right, welcome back to day 30 of doing steering work. Boy, it just feels like this job has taken forever between ordering parts and getting the wrong stuff. I just haven't been able to just focus on it, you know, and get after it. But okay, we're close. We're on the home stretch though. That little storm came in, so I just shot some paint on that real quick just to cover it up. Then after I did some thinking last night, I'm not liking how this is moving. So either I'm gonna redo these and go from here back to the firewall, or I might add some extra braces. Boy, it got chilly. Whew. We went from 100 degrees to like 70 degrees, and well, right now it's probably low 60s. I mean, for us, it's chilly. It feels really good though. It's not scalding hot anymore. I know the rest of you guys are probably getting ready for winter time and hibernation, and we're just coming out of hibernation. Well, I haven't been in hibernation. A lot of people go into hibernation in the summertime here. I've actually kept pretty busy this summer, getting all this stuff done. All right, I think that's close enough. Let me use the appropriate tool here, my channel locks, just give that a snug. This is still all just mock-up essentially. I'm gonna Loctite all of these set screws and everything once on the final assembly. Little different configuration here. I'm gonna try this. So I put in some longer ones here, going up to the firewall, one over there as well to triangulate this thing. I don't necessarily like the way it looks like that, but I kind of don't have a choice really. Since this thing is so short, I've got to make sure that it's well braced. Now I'm good as far as up and down movement, but one thing I don't like is there is probably a little bit more movement than I want side to side. And the big problem is when you're climbing up into this thing, people are going to want to grab onto the steering wheel and pull it. And that thing's got a little bit of flex. So I'm going to think about this more a little bit and see what I can come up with. For now, it's good enough. I'm just going to leave it alone. All right, now that the majority of that stuff is done, I'm gonna go ahead and throw the pitman arm on here. Let's put a load on it and see how it acts. Okie dokie, Smokey. Okay, let's see if I can loosen the steering box and get it in this way. There we go. Jeez. Okay, that did not want to cooperate. Now I did go down and get some different washers for my spacers. These are really nice, grade 8, super thick washers for this. Getting them in there is gonna be a pain in the rear, but. All right, let's tighten this thing up. I got all the spacers in there. All the bolts back in. All right, I'm gonna spin the wheel, see how it acts. Okay, let me make sure it is going lock to lock here. Yep, it's hitting the bump stop there. And it's hitting the stop down here. Okay, so it's getting full travel of the steering, so that's good. Okay, everything looks pretty good. I made an adjustment on this Heim joint. I just pulled it out just a tiny bit more. All right, so the next measurement that I'm gonna check here is my X pattern between the steering box, sector shaft, and then the idler. So it's 30 1/4. And then from the pitman arm end to the other end of the idler arm over here on the frame side, and that's 30 1/4. Okay, so all that's square. So I know that that's straight. All right, and the next thing I'm gonna check is just a quick and dirty toe check here. See what my toe is at. I'm going to suspect it's gonna be towed way out. 69 7/8. 69 1/8. Okay, so it's towed way out, so I need to bring it in. Okay. All right, I'm 1/8 of an inch towed in, which is, for today's purposes, good enough. That's close enough to get it down the road anyway for an alignment later. Big thing is now is I need to put it on the ground and really put a hard load test on it. But before I do that, I need to do the steering column, the base, the bearing. All right, now what I want to do is I have an old race and I want to press this thing up inside the tube to basically act as a backstop. All right, I'm gonna try this again. I just put it on the old disc sander over there and kind of sanded it down. Took a few thousandths off anyway. See if we can't get it in there. You don't need to worry about having no lathe. Up, maybe, maybe. She started anyway. You don't need to worry about having no press. Whew, well, it's in there. Hopefully I didn't screw myself though. It's definitely pushing out on that tube. Now I need to push that thing in there the width of a bearing. Don't want to damage that end either. I hope you guys are getting some good entertainment out of this one. It's working. That's it right there. Now let me go a tiny bit more. So let me stack these. Just give it a little whack. Now I can go ahead and hammer this bearing in here. Okay. That's in there nice and tight. Just tap it down a little bit more to back it up so as I know it's hitting that race in there. She's seated in there and I've got it pushed in just a little bit for a lip. Now to lock it in there, I really wasn't sure what I was gonna kind of do here. I have a washer that's the perfect size. I'll just have to drill this out to 3/4, but I was thinking about just putting this on there and then just put a couple tack welds on it. At least that'll just keep it from falling out, basically. That's all I need it to do. It's not gonna come out easy, that's for sure. Okay, I think that's all that needs. Yep, that's gonna be just fine. I'd like to squirt some paint on this thing before I throw it in, but no big deal if it doesn't. It'll rust out, match the rest of the interior, I guess. Happy little steering column. Not gonna paint up in there because I gotta weld it. All right, that looks better than yellow. All right, while I had the spray paint out, I went ahead and pulled all this back apart again and just gave everything a little spritz. Column all looks really good. And then I just gave that a little hit too, and then I tack welded in a crossbar here. I'm wondering if this will take care of my side to side. So we'll see what this does, and then I'll worry about painting the rest of it later. I'm just gonna sit here and wait for paint to dry. All right, let's give it a little powder coat here. Lay it in there, thick and heavy to cover up that ugly weld. Good enough. Paint's still a little bit sticky. Scratch the crap out of it, man. Can't have anything nice. Okay, there we go. I just completely screwed up the paint job. Let's tighten this stuff up. Okie doke. Of course, I scratched at all the pieces, but oh well. It is what it is. All right, I'm gonna put this thing on the ground and let's put a real load test on it. Now, as far as this little crossbar here, it did help, but there is still some movement there. It's not terrible. All right, let's do a load test on it and see what it does here. On the ground, no power steering. Ooh. It's got some force on it, I can feel it, that's for darn sure. I mean, everything feels okay. There is a little bit of movement in this joint where it's kind of like free floating a little bit. I'll turn it so you can see it. I'm definitely gonna have to work on this bracing up here and get this thing a little bit more solid so this doesn't do that. I mean, it's gonna be rare probably that I'd be turning this thing with no power steering like this. You know, and this is a heavy truck, but still, it's still gotta be, you know, if the thing dies on me and I need to turn it for whatever reason, I don't want the movement. Everything else seems okay though, but you can see that joint, how it's moving, and it's just kind of floating a little bit. And that's just because of the load I'm putting on the column and it moving. Other than that, I mean, being able to turn this like that with all that weight on the front end, that's good. I mean, that's a great test. All right, guys, as I was editing this video, I realized that I really didn't film the fix for this column mount here. So what I did was I put in a piece of plate up here on the bottom, and then I just added a couple plates here, a plate here, and then one across here. Basically, that cured all of my movement in this column and in the joint. So now I have nothing moving whatsoever. The thing is rock solid. So just tying this into the dash up here cured all my problems with that. So I figured I'd just throw that in real quick since I forgot to do it. All right, guys, I think we got her. Man, I'm exhausted. This thing wore me out. It just, the thinking and the going through all the steps with this thing, it wore my butt out. It took a lot longer than I thought it was gonna take. I guess that's expected with this stuff, you know, it's all custom stuff. So let me know what you guys think. But yeah, the fact that I'm glad I'm able to turn it, you know, with no power steering, that is definitely nice. You know, well, I mean, it has to do that, of course, but it's nice that I can do it without too much effort. It's not too bad. The original motorhome steering too was like butter. It went really smooth. That's why I wanted to utilize the original motorhome steering box and the power steering pump and all that, because all that stuff is built to be used together, you know, so I didn't want to mix up using different parts and whatnot. So it's going to work out really good. I'd really like to get the doghouse done on this thing and get the floor completely buttoned up now that the steering's done and that one little plate is done. And then probably after the doghouse and I get the floor completely sealed up, I'd like to get this wheelbase, I think, figured out on this truck. I'd like to shorten it up a little bit, I think, is what I'm thinking right now. Just, it's going to make it easier to getting in my backyard and stuff. And right now it's so darn long, it barely fits back here. And I kind of want to shorten it a little bit anyway, but I'll talk about that maybe in the next video. I'll kind of show you what I'm thinking. But the two big ones are done, brakes and steering. Those were huge items right now that feels really good to cross those off the list. And then the fuel system, I'll figure out the fuel system. I think you guys might like this. Hopefully you'll see here pretty soon. I can't wait to do the fuel tanks. Oops, I slipped there, the fuel tank. I can't wait to do the fuel system. It's gonna be fun. I think it's gonna give the truck a really cool look, I think, and I'm looking forward to doing it. It's gonna be a little bit of work. I'm gonna have to weld on gas tanks. Woo. Okie doke, guys, appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more. We'll see you on the next one. Have a great day.